From the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg, welcome to Next Level Thinking. Here are your hosts, Team APAP. Say Martin.
Hello, welcome to Next Level Thinking with your psychologist from APAP SXM. My name is Caroline van Oost and I'm a healthcare psychologist. I'm here together with two other members of APAP, Joyce Begonje and Alexandra van Luiken. This program has been made possible by the Ministry of Public Health and DCOM. This program highlights topics that help deal with the subject that matters the most, ourselves. Today, in the 6th episode of Next Level Thinking, we will talk about a phenomenon that became all too familiar to most of us, hurricane stress. But before we go into that, Joyce, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
I'm a pedagogue, and that's a Dutch word for working in the fields with children development. I was also a healthcare manager before, and I worked with children who suffered from divergent disorders and disabilities. And next to me is sitting Alexandra.
I'm a developmental psychologist. I've been working for the last 20 years on the island as a private psychologist and also involved with different organizations. And it's very good. Today we're going to give attention to hurricane stress because I think that after Irma, that is a very needed topic.
Thank you, Alexandra. So indeed, today, the topic of today is hurricane stress. Well, I think we kind of gained a new vocabulary in that sense in the last year, or at least I did. I'm finding myself talking more about hurricane brain and hurricane stress. Words I did not use much before Irma, I think. Especially in the first weeks or months after, I'm like, oh, there goes my hurricane brain. And now, in the last months, preparing for what we thought might have been a tropical storm, but luckily it was not much, Isaac, or other things threats that came to our islands. People are like, oh, there goes the hurricane stress. The people packing up their cars and getting all the water in the house and preparing or doing nothing. And that all has related to hurricane stress. We talked about it a lot. But what do we mean exactly when we talk about hurricane stress? Alexandra, what does hurricane stress mean for you?
When you think back about September 5, 2017, I think mentioning that date alone, Irma was a hurricane that beat all the records. The situation on St. Martin, I think, in advance of the arriving of that hurricane, the hurricane itself, and the aftermath had such an extensive impact on the whole society of the islands, the damage, the experience of such a natural disaster of such a serious level. I think that went beyond all our imagination, and I think it shook our world.
Yeah, actually, Alexandra, now you're talking about it, I feel like the chills going down my spine for a moment when you mentioned that date.
Exactly.
It does something to you. It did not only do something materialistic to the houses and the damages on the island, but also on our well-being, our psychological well-being.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what to expect before, but we only did know that we have to prepare ourselves really good. And that gives me already that stress because I was here during Irma. I think you guys were here too as well.
Yes.
And it was like the stress feeling from the others and from myself. It was like heightened each other up. You know what I'm saying with that? So my friend was stressing out and I was stressing out and we just feed each other with the stress feelings.
I remember when I was thinking about, okay, the hurricane season is coming up and how would be my reaction if I would see a threat or like the news messages, like something is coming. How would I react towards it? And I thought, okay, well, we'll see. And I noticed that one of the messages came up on Facebook and I saw it and I'm like, okay. It didn't affect me much at that moment. Then I went to my work and other people were talking about it and they got more stressed. And I'm like, wait, am I underestimating this?
Yeah.
Well, then it's a different kind of hurricane stress than I had after Irma. This is something like you got to anticipate on something, but you don't know what. Is it going to be as major as before or not? And so for me, it was a lot of stress, but I also hear that people sometimes get agitated. Do you recognize something like that also with others, Alexandra?
Yeah, now let's look at stress. What does stress mean? When are we talking about stress? Stress actually is a reaction of the body and the mind to a situation that requires attention. It's an elevated level of readiness. And this stress in daily life can be very helpful. Good example, when you think about stress, you're ready to cross the road and there's this car speeding by and you barely can step back to prevent being hit by the car. You get that physical reaction, like the adrenaline rushes through your body. You feel your heart pumping, your breathing stops. You're like, oh my God, you're almost, you need a minute to catch yourself again. That's like a sudden moment of stress
like
reaction.
A boost
exactly.
of stress.
Your body jumps into saving mode, basically, to save you from immediate danger.
I think we can all recognize that kind of feelings, and we all been through that certain situations. But with the hurricane stress, there's always something different going on because you're not knowing what you're going to be up to.
Exactly. And there's different types of stress. So those daily life stress, if you look at the stress that has to do with the hurricane stress that we're talking about, you can make a distinction. It's the preparation for the hurricane, the anticipation of what might be coming. And that's now after everything we all went through. That's what a lot of us are facing for the coming times. But at that point in time, if we rewind and go back to when Irma was coming, initially everybody was like, oh, probably this weather system is going to move away. Everybody was sort of relaxed, and the closer it got and the more severe the weather predictions became, you see the elevation in stress. People get more worried, they get tense, they're more agitated, they're quick to do all kind of work to catch that time because Irma is coming.
Indeed, Alexandra. There are different kinds of types of stress, and this is a specific one, hurricane stress. So hurricane stress is a real thing, I think we can say. And when you live in an area that is hurricane prone, it's something you got to deal with. And especially with the experience from last year, that has made a major impact on all of us. So I think more people would experience it in the new hurricane season. And it might take us a while to recover from that and also to be able to deal with that in a more relaxed manner as we did before. So there's a lot to talk about. Hurricane stress, what it is, how you can deal with that. And we're going to talk about a little bit more what is normal and what's not that normal. And after the break, we will discuss where the line is between normal and too intense. Stay tuned. This is Next Level Thinking.
Next Level Thinking.
It's hard to make big changes in life. The energy, time, and commitment are often too great. That's why many men in our community struggle with their health. The Department of Collective Prevention Services is encouraging all men in our community to take the positive step and get checked. Schedule your annual medical screening, practice a healthy lifestyle by eating healthy, exercise regularly, and practice safe sex consistently. This message is brought to you by Collective Prevention Services, a department of the Ministry of Health.
Hey! Prevention is the cure. Help us, we help you. Stop disease from spreading because of mosquito. I got a message for you. Say what? Please listen carefully. Listen. You can do your part to stop mosquitoes from biting me. What? Get rid of all containers. Get rid of them with water in them. Hey. Don't give mosquitoes no chance to lay eggs in them. Cause we don't want no disease. We don't want dengue. We don't want punya. We don't want Zika. No. No. Hey. No. No. Prevention is the cure. What? Help us, we help you. Stop disease from spreading. Stop it. Because of mosquito.
This is by King Voss. This message was brought to you by the Collective Prevention Services. Remember, do your part and stop disease from spreading.
Because of mosquito.
Tired of having to search through written job applications? Is it costing your company too much to find suitable talent? JobOpportunity.sx makes paper applications a thing of the past. Find all of your recruitment needs in one place with live email updates accessible from anywhere in the world, and it's free. Creating your profile is fast and easy. JobOpportunity.sx. Call 520-5279 for more info and take your business recruiting methods to the next level.
I was deceived about the nature of my job. I was abducted and sold. All my documents were confiscated and money was withheld from me. I was isolated and confined to one area. I was forced into prostitution. I was forced to lie to authorities and my family. Now that you know, what will you do?
You can help by calling the National Reporting Bureau on Human Trafficking at 542-1553 or send email to naticotip@gmail.com. Human trafficking and exploitation. Please report it.
You are listening to Next Level Thinking on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9.
Welcome back, listeners, to Next Level Thinking. My name is Caroline van Oost. I'm a healthcare psychologist, and I'm here with two other members of APAP, Joyce Begonje and Alexandra van Luiken. For those who are just joining us, we have been discussing hurricane stress.
Before the break, we looked at the impact of the island of Hurricane Irma. And just like you mentioned before the break, Caroline, it did not use the words hurricane stress and hurricane brain. But now often I use it daily in my conversations, especially during the hurricane season. I notice that we use explanation or for a different divergent behavior or tiredness or losing temper. And sometimes we use it even in jokes. So it's really a term on the island.
It is indeed. And I think it was already terms before, like probably 10 years back. But it became, we freshened up the term. Or
yes.
We gave it new life in the last year.
Yes, and that also brings me to the subject of stress. So when is stress surfaces in the right manner? And when is it or stress not helping at all?
Alexandra said something about that in our first segment. We need stress in our life. And that is very correct. We need stress to be able to function. We need stress to get us doing something. Mm-hmm. So you need a certain level of stress in your life, and it also protects you. But there's a thin line between when it protects you and when it harms you. Alexandra, when is there, reason to think, hey, maybe this is too much?
Yeah. Now, before going into that, what I would like to stress on, because that discussion I had.
Nice wordplay.
A couple of times the last time, that this is one of the topics that as a psychologist working in the field that I realized that I've been confronted with it myself, with the problems connected to hurricanes. But dealing with hurricanes and the stress that comes with it, I dare stating that everyone on the island of St. Martin has been affected by Hurricane Irma. I've had people telling me, oh no, not me. I was okay. I think with the level of damage and the experience that most people had that were at a level of life threatening, that it cannot be that even persons away from the island and not necessarily experiencing the storm experienced hurricane stress.
That's an interesting thing you're saying now, Alexander, because I think that's also part of what we're talking about today. Stress is a general, reaction to something happening.
Correct.
And what people are often referring to when you say, like, did it affect you or do you have stress related to it? That they would say no, because they're thinking about when it's abnormal.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking about the normal parts.
Yeah, or that they didn't have no damage at their house. They said, no, I was lucky, my house was okay, but still,
it's not only
effect it had on you as a person was there. Mm-hmm. I think no one can say that it did not affect them, even if they were worried for a family member or a friend.
Yeah. So in a way, it affected everybody.
Correct.
Even by seeing the images on the news, seeing the things on the newspaper, it can have an effect on you.
Yeah.
But when is that effect? Because what we also said, I remember that we did a lot of, radio shows after the hurricane when radio was back up in the air. We were very happy to be able to reach to a lot of people to explain about the psychological part after a hurricane. And then one of the lines that we used, it's normal to feel abnormal at first.
Exactly. Because of this experience, it is normal to feel abnormal.
Yeah.
And because, basically, literally, it shook up your world. Mm-hmm. So in that way, everybody in general doesn't feel themselves.
Exactly.
And then what we have to look at now is indeed, how do you recover from that? And when is it normal to feel normal again? And when is it normal to continue feeling abnormal?
And when is that the case? When do we start? Should we start to feel normal again?
Yeah, it's a very personal experience, of course. But in time, what you have to see in the first few weeks is that you have to feel a change, that you slowly recover and that you start to feel normal again, that you recognize moments later in time that you say, hey, back to normal. It's just a little bit that you recognize your old lifestyle and your old way of reacting.
It was after the hurricane that I always woke up at specific hours during the night. And I heard that a lot of people had that. Mm-hmm. And at a certain moment, I was like, oh, I slept the whole night through. Yeah. Finally, I'm going to get some rest. But I also think it's related to what happens to you after the storm. Because if you are in Puerto Rico, where you were like for months with no electricity, and some people on St. Martin had actually the same situation without electricity or water for a long, long time.
Yeah. And the fear of losing out food.
And the stress keeps going. And so it takes you longer to feel normal again. So that's also something you have to take in consideration. In what kind of situation are you? What stress factors are there still? But
what is important by the stress is to realize that you almost have a biological, physical reaction. And to undo that, you need time, first of all. You need time for your body to come down from that alert mode. Mm-hmm. But then besides time, in that time, you have to have the ability to relax. And if you cannot relax because your house is still in shambles, or you lost your job, or other stress factors that continues, you cannot go to the gym that you used to go to, or you cannot go to your friend, or your children are
not going
off
to school.
island, or there can be all kind of factors in the aftermath of the hurricane, especially, that throws you back in that stress level and keep you there. And there is where it can become more tricky.
Indeed. But when we said before, when is it abnormal? Is I think also you can know yourself when you're not yourself. And if that keeps going like that for a longer while, then something is going on that might need some more attention.
Yeah. So, but what is abnormal?
It's quite difficult to find what is abnormal.
Yeah,
too,
I just want to say that.
Because what I've noticed is that when we are hearing an alert message on the radio for a next approaching storm, we all reacting so much differently. And that is sometimes so confusing what's normal and not normal, because sometimes I think I'm doing the normal and right thing, but others do that thing as well.
But let's give some examples. What's if we consider it to feel abnormal, when you feel agitated, when you're quick to react, or when you become withdrawn. That's the opposite. Some people become very active, other people become very passive.
Well, so my friend already booked a ticket to Curaçao.
So there are different ways how you can react towards the stress that you're experiencing at that moment.
Or you experience physical complaints, that you have headaches, or you have belly aches, you feel nervous. Basically, you feel different than that you normally do.
So we can conclude in that sense that, okay, so it can be different for everybody involved. Everybody experiences stress in their own way. So there's no normal way of stress, but it's abnormal when you're not feeling yourself for a longer time. Okay, so this is interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about how to deal with that after the break. Stay tuned. Interesting topic.
Next Level Thinking.
It's important to know more, now than ever, what employment opportunities are available. Get a head start on the competition at jobopportunity.sx by ensuring that your experience, achievements, and professional aspirations are viewed by the island's employers. Create your profile, display your skills, and be informed on what jobs are available with just-in-time updates at the tip of your fingers. For more info, call 520-5279 and register now at jobopportunity.sx. It's hard to make big changes in life. The energy, time, and commitment are often too great. That's why many men in our community struggle with their health. The Department of Collective Prevention Services is encouraging all men in our community to take the positive step and get checked. Schedule your annual medical screening, practice a healthy lifestyle by eating healthy, exercise regularly, and practice safe sex consistently. This message is brought to you by Collective Prevention Services, a department of the Ministry of Health.
I was deceived about the nature of my job. I was abducted and sold. All my documents were confiscated and money was withheld from me. I was isolated and confined to one area. I was forced into prostitution. I was forced to lie to authorities and my family. Now that you know, what will you do?
You can help by calling the National Reporting Bureau on Human Trafficking at 542-1553 or send email to naticotip@gmail.com. Human trafficking and exploitation. Please report it.
You are listening to Next Level Thinking on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9.
Welcome back, listeners, to Next Level Thinking. My name is Caroline van Oost. I'm a psychologist and I'm a member of APAP, Association of Psychologists and Allied Professionals St. Martin. I'm here today with Joyce Bourgogne and Alexandra van Luiken, both also members of APAP. For those who are just now joining us, we have been discussing hurricane stress. We talked a little bit about what it is and what are we talking about when we use those words, hurricane stress or hurricane brain. And when is it normal? And when is it not normal? We concluded that it's normal to have hurricane stress, especially if you're in a hurricane-prone area like we are here on St. Martin. And everybody reacts in a different way. So you cannot say like, oh, if you react like that, that's not normal or that is normal. It's also dependent on the person that you are and what you experienced before and how you deal with situations in life in general. But after that part of what is normal and what's not normal, how do you deal with the stress? What are do's and don'ts to deal with hurricane stress? Alexandra, could you enlighten us a little bit about a do? You should do that, this or that.
Yeah, I think I want to start with saying that to realize that despite you feeling off yourself, that to realize that there is stuff you can do. The effects are so wide on your whole life, might be the feeling that you experience, but basically you have to start at the beginning. You have to realize by thinking that you need some time. That's the trust that with time you will recover. Then otherwise than that, the basics of trying to get rest, to lie down, to rest yourself or to sleep. If you have sleeping difficulties, then even if you have to use the rest of the day to in between to catch some sleep, that getting your rest and your sleep is also very important for your recovery and to cope with the stress.
I think that's a very, very important one, Alexandra. I always compare it to, I'm a diver myself. And I like to go diving, but one of the best, of the most important part of diving is preparation.
Yeah.
And I have to make sure that the tanks that I use are filled with oxygen. Because if I go diving with like half of a tank or a quarter of a tank, I won't be able to make the full dive.
No.
So I need to have, a tank, a bottle that is reloaded. And that's actually what we have to do when we are sleeping. So you got to make sure that you sleep well and that you take time to rest so you can also deal better with stress. So I think that sleep is one of the most vital things for dealing with stress, to invest in good sleep.
Yeah, and what you see too, because everybody is so hyped, I would almost say, is that not taking the time to rest or to sleep. And also the food. Nutritious food is very important. And you see that often is lacking too, that you're quickly gonna eat something in between all the cleaning up that you're doing, but taking time to eat healthy and to give attention to a break, to have lunch or dinner, and to reconnect to your social network.
Indeed, that's very important as well. It's like also to keep connecting to your loved ones and don't only like, okay, I'm going to go to the supermarket now and I'm going to get all the food, canned food, what I can get. Yeah. You gotta also stay connected to the people around you. But that also makes me think, because before we mentioned that when I saw one of the message of a tropical storm coming, that I was like, okay, well, we had worse. So I wasn't affected by it much myself. And then I went to work and I actually connected to others, and that actually made me more concerned. So it can also work the other way around. What do you say about that, Joyce?
Yeah, you see that very often. So I think it's also good to tune in sometimes to the radio or to Facebook pages, but also take a break of social media just to give your mind some quiet time. Because like you mentioned, Alexandra, sleeping is very good for recovering stress. But if you're having stress, sleeping is just a thing you cannot do because you're worried a lot. And if you are worried and you feed your brain with all those things you hear about social media and friends, then it's going to be worse. So yes, you need your information right, but make sure you don't overdo it.
Yeah, to stay away a bit from that overload.
Yes.
Also, another way to compensate when you're experiencing sleeping problems or a tense mind, the thoughts that keep running through your mind, meditation and breathing techniques can be very effective to calm yourself down. And obviously, there's also big don't that you see happening a lot, is to avoid drinking alcohol and using drugs. Unfortunately, after experience like Irma, natural disaster, that you see an increase of people trying to numb themselves by drinking too much alcohol. Very logical, you might think, but it's very ineffective and basically puts you further away in your stress difficulties.
Yes, it might numb you, right, on the short term, but in the long term, it will only increase your problem. So that's indeed a big no-no to remedy the things with alcohol or those kind of other substance use that you can, damage yourself even more with.
Right.
What are other no-nos, Joyce?
Well, actually, I think of something I would have do because I have doo-doos.
What are the doo-doos?
Sometimes.
That's a weird word, though. Let's not use that one.
You can do dodo or something like that. So laughing is really good to stress relief. And also, just acknowledge, because if you are, then again, acceptance and acknowledge is, you have to start happening that, and it's not coming when you are stressed because you don't want to feel you're stressing. But if you are talking to somebody or getting a person in your life who you can trust, just talk about your stressing feelings, you can acknowledge and you can accept more. So that's a do for sure you have to do.
What I hear often, with hurricanes in general and stress in general, is that thoughts keep running through your mind. I can't stop my mind from thinking. That those thoughts that continue to run through your mind and keep yourself from relaxing basically can be influenced by focusing on what you can do. A lot of those thoughts often are things that you cannot influence, but basically the don't focus on things that you cannot influence, but do focus on things that you can influence. That feeling that you create by focusing on those things that you can influence calms you down. It can make you a little more active, can give you a feeling of control again, and as such that you can put your mind at ease.
Indeed, Alexandra, to put your mind at ease, to search for a little bit of control in a situation you cannot fully control, and also to realize that. Make sure that you're safe. Ensure the safety and the physical integrity of your home as much as possible by following the recommended storm preparedness guidelines. And also, make sure that, you know where you're going to be if a storm is approaching, that you're safe. And if everything is covered, see if you can help somebody else so you don't get the thoughts going all the time, or find something distracting to do. Read a book, watch TV, play a game, do something else that distracts you. So there are a lot of things that you can do to manage with hurricane stress, and it's something that we have to keep practicing when we are in hurricane season. So it's normal to experience stress, and it's also normal that we have to deal with it. But at some moments, it could become too much. So we're going to talk about that after the break, about treatment, psychological treatment, when it really is too much.
Next level